This year is the 100th year since the first awarding of the Brownlow Medal. So, to celebrate, I'm dedicating this September as Brownlow Month on the GAZ-man channel. Across the 101 years of history of the Brownlow Medal, there's been a few oddities that stand out across time. There have been shock winners, joint winners, winners who've missed matches, and winners seen as undeserved. However, in 1 year, all 4 of those things happened and basically changed the entire structure of how the AFL's most prized individual honour is awarded. 1924. Edward Cargie Greaves wins the first Brownlow Medal with 7 votes. What a crap player, right? Well, wrong, as the initial system was a bit weird, like most football rules back then. The umpires, as they do now, noted who the best player on the field was. However, this system not only relied on one umpire, but that one umpire gave 1 vote, just one, to the player he deemed the best. So Greaves managed to be best on ground 7 times from his 14 1923 games. For reference, no player in 2023 got more than 7 3-vote best on ground performances. He finished a clear first, albeit with a tie for second place. The next year, Colin Watson polled a remarkable 9 to finish again clear of second place, who was Greaves again with 7. Just by looking at these numbers, we can con ourselves into thinking that this is a good system. But looking back on it with our advanced future logic, we can see the gaping holes in it. Notwithstanding the whole "is the umpire the best person to cast votes" argument, which I'll touch on in another video, the single vote system is hot stinky dog shit. It provides no nuance, you're either the best or the rest, which disincentivises consistent performers. It also fails to account for players in a good team. Geelong were merely an average team in these years, and St Kilda was, of course, St Kilda. Teams like Carlton and Collingwood, who had a more balanced and better team overall, combined for 1 3-vote player. 3 Blues each got 2 votes, stealing from each other in a deep talent pool. 5 players each from those teams and Essendon polled, with Greaves' 7 votes being a Herculean effort considering that 6 other Cats polled votes. But the system kept churning out clear winners. 1927 was the first brush with disaster, with 4 players within 2 votes of winner Sid Coventry. But thanks largely to the talent of Ivor Warne-Smith, the validity of this system never got the chance to spring up when multiple players won. Well, at least not for a couple of years. Albert Collier won the Brownlow in 1929. His brother, Harry, won it in 1930. This is not only the only case of brothers winning the medal, but they did it consecutively. This will likely never happen again, and we should be talking about it all the time, but we don't, because Harry Collier didn't win the medal in 1930. He won it in 1989, aged 81. Odd, right? Well, at least that makes him the oldest medal recipient, except it doesn't. Let me introduce you to the second winner of the 1930 Brownlow Medal, Alan Hopkins. The first true star of the phenomenally bad early VFL Footscray, the skipper of the side received his medal at the same time as Collier, but was 3 years older. Due to circumstances around tiebreakers in the Brownlow, only 1 winner was crowned at the time per year, a rule which was abolished in 1980, with retrospective medals handed out to all men who'd tied for the Brownlow simultaneously in 1989. Hopkins was the oldest of these 8 men, having won his well before the others, and his record as oldest Brownlow recipient will never be beaten unless Scott Pendlebury plays until like 2078. Brief tangent, Bill Hutchison is and will forever be the only man to win his Brownlow posthumously as a result. In fact, it was the Colliers who led the push to give retrospective Brownlow medals out in the first place. That's not a very nice thing to say, Harry.
Don't be a smarty about it, or you're going to win 1 championship. You're a guru, are you? Mate, you're a superstar now, are you?
This all came about because in 1930, there was no concrete, universally agreed stipulation as to what would actually happen in the event of a tie, which would boggle my mind, but then again, this is the sport that had these scoring areas serve literally no scoring purpose for 40 years. Now, two separate provisions, both equally binding, had been written into the rulebook to decide a winner. One dictated that the player with the fewest games played won the medal, while an older one dictated that the umpires would reconvene and decide a winner based on, general vibes. There was also another problem specifically unique to the 1930 medal count. The 1930 Brownlow Medal vote tally was 105 total votes, one for each game, except there were 108 home and away matches played. 3 votes were deemed to be informal, with no clear preference as to who the vote getter was. Apparently, and I haven't been able to truly confirm this, but one of these 3 pieces of paper allegedly simply read Collier. If it was a vote for Harry, he should win the medal outright. However, if it was for Albert, who polled thrice, he would also tie on 4 votes. This piece of paper, if it existed, completely ruined the sanctity of the medal, with the Umpire and Permit Commission recommending no medal be awarded because of the informal votes, and the Collier paper in particular. However, the VFL board as a whole really didn't like that idea, instead opting on that first provision. In the event of a tie, the player with the least games played would win. This was written into the rules in late September 1930. And so, it's time to introduce you to the man who the 1930 medal originally went to. Stan Judkins. Stan Judkins was a small man even for the time. He was 166 centimetres and 61 kilos, but that tiny size meant it was hard to catch him on the wing, and even if you did, it was hard to grab a hold of him. He was a handy player in his day, evidenced by the 4 Brownlow votes he received in the early part of 1930. However, his form slipped, and he was dropped after round 13, playing in the reserves for the rest of the home and away season. He finished with 12 games. Hopkins had played 15 and Collier 18. So, despite being so poor that he was dropped even after being a clear enough best on ground 4 times in what would have been no more than an 8-game span, Judkins won the Brownlow Medal. Typically for this situation, he discovered this whilst reading the paper. No one had thought to tell him he'd won yet, as the VFL would normally send letters out to their winners at the time. No gala at the Crown Palladium back then, no sir. Apparently, Stan didn't care. He was more excited about being recalled for that week's semi-final, using the confidence gained by apparently being the best player in the league to play well in a tight loss. To ensure that this whole bizarre spectacle would never happen again and would never ruin the sanctity of the medal, the VFL introduced the 3-2-1 voting system that we still use today, despite a brief dalliance with a weird system in the late 70s. Judkins remains the shortest, lightest Brownlow winner,
But you're so small.
and the only one dropped for form reasons in their Brownlow season. Despite being dropped, Judkins went on to perhaps have the most success out of all 3 winners from that point. Hopkins would finish second in the 1931 count to the greatest player of all time, who will be receiving 1 if not 2 videos in the future, believe me. Hopkins also placed 4th in a 1933 count, while Harry Collier polled only 14 votes across the rest of his career. However, he did play in a smattering of grand finals. Meanwhile, Stan, the little fella who wasn't considered good enough to play nearly a third of the 1930 season, would place 5th in the 1931 and 1932 Brownlow counts, showing that even under the new system his win had necessitated the creation of, he was still a hell of a player. That 32 season was special in another way, as Judkins won a premiership for his Tigers. This was the second of 4 consecutive grand finals the Tigers made with Judkins in the centre, winning 2. His Brownlow polling had dipped to only 2 votes in 1934, but he was still productive. However, he would only play 13 VFL matches after that 1934 flag. He was dropped again to the reserves in 1936, but with no Brownlow Medal this time. The following year, he left the VFL to coach Albury, winning a flag instantly. He would end his playing career by enlisting in the Second World War. He would keep ties with Richmond afterwards. His son Noel actually became a respected administrator and scout throughout the 1950s and 60s before Stan passed away in 1986, before his fellow 1930 winners were awarded their medals. He left behind a strange legacy. 133 games for only the 5 goals is, by Brownlow standards, rather low, having both entered the league somewhat late and left it quite early. His .38 votes per game in the 3-2-1 era is very low. He never won a best and fairest. The archived footage of his career spans a sum total of about 2 seconds. Richmond, well, they weren't sure of what to make of it themselves, waiting until 2022 to induct their first Brownlow Medal winner into their Hall of Fame. And I'm pretty sure he will never make it into the AFL Hall of Fame. No one talks about him. Very few know his name, and yet he has, thanks to his bizarre 1930 form, changed the game more than 99% of the players before or since. He is unique. He is Stan Judkins. He is the man who changed the Brownlow Medal. And thanks so much again to the lifeblood of this channel, the Patreon members. Some Geek from Twitter, Emmanuel Cans, Seamus O'Dowd Clancy, Grittio M, Renegar, and our newest member, Nathan Krauseratus.